There's probably no figure in Ontario's history that's been a greater danger to the democracy than Fantino.
Hear, hear.
He absolutely disagrees with court rulings, whether that's in Caledonia, Deserano, Sharbert's Lake. Every single time a judge has ordered the OPP to enforce the law, Fantino has refused to do it. And now we find out that the OPP are going around telling the various builders, the various landowners, that the natives have the right to come on their property, to occupy their land, to take over their buildings, to take over their homes, because of color of right. It's a legal term. But the problem is, just over a year ago, the Attorney General of Ontario submitted a document to the Ippewash Inquiry claiming that over 20 different judges have ruled natives do not have color or right to occupy people's property. That was the position of the Ontario Attorney General. It's part of the inquiry documents that you can get on the internet. The judges down in Sharbert Lake was told that an OPP officers informed the natives that they had the right to occupy people's land because of color of right. The judge demanded to know the names of the officers. Of course, the natives said, well, we forgot who it was. Then the next thing that happened was the native was put in jail for 6 months for occupying the land. Clearly, they don't have color of right. Up in Thunder Bay, the same thing happened. 6 natives were thrown in jail for 6 months because they do not have the right to walk onto your property or anyone else's property and take over your home or take over the building or do anything else. We don't have that right. They don't have that right. In Canada, you're equal under the law. Just 2 weeks ago, the Supreme Court ruled that native land claims have no special right in court over any other claim before the court. There are no special laws that say natives can do this or do this or do this. It doesn't exist. It's propaganda put together by the OPP and the McGuinty government. 2 years ago, McGuinty kept promising the people, don't gather, stay home, hide under your beds, the government's going to solve your problem. Well, in a democracy, when the police force refuses to enforce the law, it's incumbent upon the government to order the police to enforce the law. Can you imagine if the OPP decided to arrest every black person driving on the 401 because there's a white supremacist group that lived next to the 401 that was going to beat them up? Can you imagine that the OPP would actually stop every black person on the highway because of the fear that some white supremacist group was going to beat them? McGuinty would be outraged to hear that black people were being arrested for being on a street. Well, we've been arrested for standing on a street, for being white. The same street that if the natives want to walk down that street, they get a police escort. They get a cop in front and behind with their lights going, saying you have the right to go down this street, which is exactly what they have. They do have that right. But so does everybody else in this country. You can't set rights and rules based on a race of a person. You can't determine that you're going to enforce the laws because this person's black or this person's white. The laws are there for everybody. And if this government has a hard time understanding multiculturalism, then they might as well just admit to the public they reject the concept and that they're only there for special interest groups. When a government fails to enforce the laws through the police department, democracy demands that the people get involved. Because we don't live under a dictatorship. You don't have the excuse to say, we get to stay home because we're not involved. That's what democracy is. Each person must take the responsibility to ensure that rights are upheld in this country. It's amazing that the Charter of Rights, the Constitution in Canada, there's no police force you complain to if your rights have been violated. There's no government agency that you can go to say, someone has violated my charter rights. In Canada, there is no enforcement of the Charter of Rights. The only option you have, and according to the Charter, is that you have to take your money and you have to sue somebody to get your charter rights enforced. It's time for this country to say that if we really believe in human rights, and if we really believe in charter rights, then it's incumbent upon the government to enforce charter rights. Do what they do in the States. You violate someone's civil rights, and you go to jail. If you're a cop who beats up a black person, and it's proven that you violated his civil rights, you spend time in jail. If we had that in Canada, if we had actual enforcement of the laws so that people's rights were enforced, guarantee you there wouldn't be a single OPP officer who would violate anyone's rights, because he'd be spending time in jail. But now in Canada, it's left up to you and I. Democracy demands that we get involved. And that's what we're here for today. And I thank everyone for showing up, and we have to keep going because the message has to keep getting out. And it doesn't really matter about the numbers. Why? Because McGuinty doesn't want anyone speaking. The OPP doesn't want anyone speaking out. So as long as we're getting the message out, then the politicians and Fantino are afraid. Thank you for your time.